Well, Shabbat Shalom again, everybody, or just a Shalom if you're listening to this on some other day than the Sabbath. I had to come back, I had just made this video here. I had just put it up, and look at that. It's got one view on it already. I'm like, wow, that is so cool. I remember waiting for a week when I would post a video 5 years ago or so, and it'd take a week or two to get a view, and that's if I get a friend talked into looking at it. And pretty sad, but I'm real thankful that my voice is being heard a little more. Already got one view, and that's very, very successful for me to get one view within a matter of maybe 10 minutes since it's been posted. I did want to comment on the video because this is actually the picture here, the thumbnail that came up, and I found that real interesting because the fella that's sending me this horn, and today being the Sabbath, he wrote and said, look, my printer just went down. I won't be able to print your label, until Monday when I go in the office. And I'm thinking to myself without telling him, well, hey, praise you, Yahshua, for going ahead and letting his printer break down so he don't have to do this business for me on the Sabbath. I had no idea that they would be putting the postage labels or whatever and shipping it out on the Sabbath. It's bad enough the postmen are out there having to work on Sabbaths. If there was any other way to do these things, I would find a way, but when it's dealing with the postage, you're going to work on the Sabbaths. And then I just found it pretty peculiar out of all the thumbnails that there could have been, and I didn't put this as a thumbnail, but this is how it is with the thumbnail, with the shofar. And I'm writing a guy explaining, hey, look, I don't want to do business in the Sabbath, but, I'm not going to complain if it doesn't come when you said, as long as it's here by the 27th, so I can blow it on the Feast of Trumpets on the 28th. So anyway, I found that interesting because I was talking to the guy, and poof, this is the very thumbnail that comes up, which really, sets, for me, what the Feast of Trumpets is all about there, and it really accentuated that video. Now, what I really wanted to talk about was comments, okay? I really would like comments, and, nothing is too dumb. I mean, if you're going to be vulgar, leave comments for someone else. I'll love them there. I don't want them here. This is a family type, and I don't have any problems, okay? There's not been any comments that I know of that have been recent. Now, I've had trolls come after me in the past, and they've used vulgar comments, and I even left them and said, look, if you post another vulgar one, man, I'm just going to delete you from it, but I don't delete anybody's questions or comments. I don't delete people's answers as long as they're not vulgar. They can be stupid, and I'm sorry if they are, but some questions are real stupid, and they were programmed that way by the trolls, without the vulgarity, and I'll do my best to even answer some of those when I know they're not seeking truth anyway. But, if you have a sincere question or whatever, please do write. Now, for instance, here on Living Righteously, Beware Transference of Spirits, and this was put out here by Truth Unveiled 777. And I like the guy, I mean, there's a couple things I don't agree with him on, but I'm sure there's things that I would speak if he listened to my videos that he wouldn't agree on either. But he brings out some real interesting things, and I leave comments like down here. It's Little Mama had wrote, posted something, and I came back and explained, about our king's name and our father's names being taken from the scriptures and such, by the King James perversion of 1611, where it didn't even have the letter J in the name. And then here, 18 hours ago, Lil Sheep had wrote and said, you were saying that the King James version is fake? Then what Bible is the right one? So anyway, you can go there and you can read this. I'm not going to go through it all, but, there were Geneva Bibles that had all been handwritten prior to King James. And for King James to make an authorized version, he had to gather up the Geneva Bibles. And if people didn't want to give them up, well, he'd have them killed, and then they would take the Geneva Bible and they'd be destroyed. And I think there was three Geneva Bibles, original Geneva Bible. And it was easy for everyone to know who had them because it was all handwritten. You had to have a lot of dinero, man, to be able to purchase an original Geneva Bible. They were all handwritten, so everybody that bought one, their names were known. So it wasn't difficult for King James. So some of these people actually hid them away and refused to cough them up. And then years later, they were discovered. But the King James Version, when it came out, only 3, give or take, of the original Geneva Bibles were left on the, on earth. There were no more of them. And then King James came out where the letter J wasn't even in the 1611 original King James Version. So there was no Jesus. Jesus wasn't invented, until around 1650 to 1750, that most reputable encyclopedias will show you on the page for J, where the J's start. Okay? In there it says the first thing, the letter J was invented. So I was explaining this to different people on different pages and videos. I leave a lot of comments all across the web. But this here was an excellent question. She thought I was saying from what I had written up here that the King James Version was a fake. But it's really not a fake. It's a fraud. It's perverted. But you've got salvation in there. And then the question was, what Bible do I think was a good one? And of course I speak about, how these key study Bibles, I like them. I don't have one. I don't have the money for them. But, they're just a regular size Bible, a little bit thicker, because in there they'll have the Strong's Concordance. They'll have a bit of a dictionary, and things of that sort, which come in handy because sometimes, you just can't remember what, Bible verse and chapter or even the book that it's found in. You might have these scriptures in your mind, but if you could think of key words that are in there, like where Satan took our king up to the precipice. Well, precipice is probably only mentioned one or a few times in the Holy Scriptures. So when you look up precipice in a key study Bible, it'll show you, that it's like in Matthew 4 or 5 there, where Satan had, come after him after he had done his fasting. So I really find the key study Bibles very beneficial. As far as what version, they all have salvation in there. Depends if you can, wade through the gobbledygook. Most of them are pretty much the same, but the Strong's Concordance, the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, is a real must for the seeker, especially if internet goes down, because then you couldn't use an online Bible to bring up these different definitions and such. But the thing about the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance is it works hand in hand with the King James Version. The New King James Version shows a little bit difference, and I'm going to show you that over here, which is basically what I wanted to bring out with this video. I remember there is one scripture that I had in the ASV where it mentioned Yah. So all of a sudden this morning it's like, I'll type in Yah for the word search in my Blue Letter Bible online Bible. And I click the old King James button, and it says here there's 4 results in the New King James Version, one in the NET, one in the ASV, and one in the HNV. And I'm like, wow, that is pretty cool. But I don't remember it being 4. I remember 1, and I had an ASV at the time when I found, and I searched and searched, and they couldn't find it. But Yah is found, as it shows here, 4 times in the New King James Version. And, they're still there. You can still look it up in your scriptures. So I'm hoping you'll get your book out and mark down here and put it in the back, where you got these white blank pages, right in there. Say Yahweh's name mentioned 4 times. And then put down Psalm 68:4, Isaiah 12:2, Isaiah 26:4, and Isaiah 38:11. And it pleases me so much, but this name God that's put in there, even with the capital letter, is the same thing as a small letter, G-O-D. I don't know if I ever showed that to you before, so let me go over here to 2 Corinthians. Let's do it this way. 2 COR 4:4. And I'll show you something that, should convince you that you should really look into who it is that you're praying to. Our King says, not, who you worship in Yachanan or John chapter 4. But here it says in 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the small letter G-O-D of this world is mentioned, and in the image of this capital letter G-O-D. Now let me show you, I'll explain it to you. If you're in the Blue Letter Bible and you're on this page, what you do is you click on this and it'll bring up tools. Okay, this is more or less Strong's Concordance. Now here you see the small letter G-O-D here, it says, is this Greek word 2316, meaning theos. But then you go down here to the big letter G-O-D, and my word what? It is still the Greek word 2316. 2316 means that it's the big capital letter G, as well as 2316 is the little letter G. So let's just click on that, and it'll bring up, and that's with a left click, it'll bring up the definitions. Theos, okay, that's a Greek word to begin with. And it came in. Now, the Old Testament is El and Elohim. But then when the Greeks translated it, they have deities as well. Theos, one, so that's who they did it from. And here it says, right here, your first definition under this here, theos, is a god or goddess, a general name of deities or divinities. That's the first definition of the capital letter G-O-D here in 2 Corinthians 2:2 or 4:4. I was halfway there, man. Okay, I got halfway there. Let me back click again so we can see in whom the small letter G-O-D of this world is, or that of the big letter G-O-D. It is the gods or deities of the Canaanite and Phoenician pantheons. That's what it is. So anyway, we had these 4 results, and I do want to read it, taking out the names of the Canaanite Phoenician deities, and I'm going to put Yahweh's name back in where it should be. And here they've got 4 places where they dissect the name of Yah. But if you're calling to Jesus or Allah or whatever, here it's going to show you they actually put it back in. The King James Version itself didn't have it in there. But the New King James Version, they actually put back Yahweh's name a little bit in so they feel justified for all the times they've taken it out, hoping they'll get a little salvation, maybe get some purgatory instead of going to hell right away for what they've done in the King James Version alone. But anyway, it says here in Psalm 68:4, sing to Yahweh, sing praises to his name. Extol him who rides on the clouds by his name Yahweh, and rejoice before him. Isaiah 12:2, behold, Yahweh is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid, for Yah. And then they got Baal here, the Baal. And this is, for little sheep there, it's the reason that he or she was wanting to know if the King James Version was a fake. And it's a perversion is what it is. There's salvation still in there. Remember, salvation, 3 easy sentences. Keep the 10 commandments by keeping the give or take 613 laws that apply to you. May only be 150 laws actually apply to you that you would be keeping the 10 commandments in full if you kept them. You could do it with just keeping 2 of the greatest commandments of the law that aren't found in the 10 commandments. But if you keep the 2 greatest commandments, to love your father with all your heart, mind, soul, might, your every fiber in your DNA, to please our Father now through his Son Yeshua our King, if you did everything to please him without sinning, okay, you can't be eating a pork sandwich and thanking him for it, because you're defiling yourself. That's not a thing that's going to please our King. Even if you think it's right, you shouldn't do it. You should consider your ways. Now, if you did love our King, you're not going to call him Jesus, okay? And you're not going to call him Baal. Nor are you going to call our Heavenly Father those things, because Yeshua is quite jealous, man. But anyway, with these second greatest commandment in the law is to love your brother as yourself. If you can do them too, all the other 611 give or take laws simply show you how to keep those too. And if you keep them too, you're keeping the 10 commandments. And if you can do that, then our King will reveal his name to you. Even like the New King James Version's trying to show you partially the name of Yahweh. And it says here, behold, Yahweh is my salvation, I will trust and not be afraid. For Yah, our Father, is my strength and song. He also has become, which means at one time he wasn't. But, you know, here Isaiah came to learn who Yahweh actually is, and he recognized him as his salvation. He has also become my salvation. Here Isaiah 26:4, trust in the Father forever, not Baal. You don't want to trust in Baal at all, as King James would like you to do. For in Yah, the Father, is everlasting strength. And you get strengthened when you can stand up and say, I'm not going to break that law again. You get strength. you don't, fade in and out of crowds anymore. You put up a guardrail and you say, no, I'm not going that way. And I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go right straight down this straight and narrow path that our King showed us how to do. And I'm going to trust in our King only. And that's how you can trust in the Father, because you can't get to the Father except through the Son. Here in Isaiah 38:11, it said, I shall not see Yah, the Father, in the land of the living. I shall observe man no more among the inhabitants of the world. But there's 4 times that it mentions Yah, Yahweh. And I just wanted to point that out. There is salvation in every Bible. You just have to filter out these lies. And the only way you can do that is to learn to read these scriptures. And I've been bringing out many videos showing you how to do so. Just like our King said over here in, John chapter 5, I believe it is. Because last time I made the mistake and I went to Matthew 5 and it wasn't there. But anyway, read the end of this here. Yeshua is talking. He says, yet I do not receive testimony from man, but I say these things that you may be saved. And you got to save yourself. If Father Abraham and Moshe and Yachanan and Isaiah and all the guys was alive and well on the earth today, not one of them or all their combined efforts could save you. You can save yourself. That's it. Our King can't even save you. You have to save yourself by what? Yes, keeping the 10 commandments by upholding the give or take 613 laws, and to put your trust in Yahshua only. That's salvation. But anyway, our king speaks. He keeps going down here. He says, you search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. Now, one of the more recent videos I just brought out, our king's statement here is proven by everyone that's taken the spiritual test to see if you know him or not. Now, there are some, and I've had some great comments saying, oh, I do it, I keep the commandments, things of that sort. And because they do, then they do know our king. But at one time, they didn't. You know, at one time, they was born into their parents' sins, which I pray are removed, so the curses will be gone as well. But to understand the scriptures, you need to know how to read it. And our king is explaining it here. He says, you search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. When 99% of the people that took the test, if they had taken it prior to starting to keep the laws and commandments and the love of them growing in them, they would have failed it. Only our king could have ever passed it first time around. So everybody failed, though they might not see it until today. Say, wow, I actually was failing it. Now, if you're failing it right away because you're you know, Islam or a Christian or whatever your religion is, saying, oh, I know him, and yet you do not keep his commandments, and you found out you are a liar and there's no truth in you, and it's not my words. They are now, you know, because they're burned into me, just the same as what the covenant is, where the laws and commandments are burned into your inward parts and such. And this is what our king wants you to see and understand, so that you can start reading the scriptures. Because you can't read them, really. There's things you can pick out. Just like a 3-year-old child speaking, you know, several sentences and a lot of no's and a lot of yeses. That's the type of spiritual understanding, you know, some of the experts that are in these religions have. They only can see a few things, but they can't see the real truth. They can't read these things because Scripture's talking about them right here. Our king is saying, them preachers search the Scriptures, for in them they think they have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me. And yet they teach, don't keep the laws and commandments. Come on over Sunday, we're going to have us a pork dinner where you can donate to help these people out by eating pork and killing yourself spiritually because we don't understand what's in the scriptures. And that's what they're saying. But anyway, our king says, but you're not willing to come to me that you may have life. Jimmy Swaggart and, you know, Peter Popoff and all these guys they'll flock to, boy, and they'll throw their money at their feet. I've seen some guy, you know, just worshiping money. He's on this like had a couple stairs up to the stage, and he's got money all up and down, and he's just walking in it and praising, and people's throwing money at his feet, and he's talking this prosperity God crap or whatever it is, and it's like, man, these people, why don't they come to him that they may have life? But you are not willing to come to me that you may have life. I do not receive honor from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of Yahweh in you. Same thing as when you take the test, you know, and you found out you didn't know him. Yahshua, you know, or the Jesus, or whoever it is that you call on. If you're not keeping the commandments written in the book, the holy written words, our king became the every living word. If you're not living by every part of him, well, the body's going to expel you, okay? If you ever got in there at all. You're like a virus or a germ blowing in the air. If you said you know him, and yet you don't keep his commandments, shows you hate your brothers. So you're not keeping one of the two of the greatest commandments there. If you're eating pork, you're going to live less, and you're going to be less healthy. You're stealing the joy from me. Okay, so you're stealing from me. Stop doing it. Anyway, our king says, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, like Peter Popoff, Jimmy Swaggart, and, you know, all these others, your evangelists on Sunday mornings and things of this sort. Praise Yahweh, they're not on the Sabbath. But anyway, if they come in their own name, him you will receive. And Yahshua says further, he says, how can you believe who receive honor from one another, and do not seek the honor that comes from Yahweh only? Now pay attention, please. He's going to show you how to read these scriptures, because you don't even know the king's language unless you believe these next 3 verses. And if you don't believe them, I suggest you get on your knees and pray and ask our king to reveal to you whether it's true or not. Because your preachers are lying to you. Stop listening to them and quit paying them. Time's running out, my friends. If you notice the Bahamas, guess what? My heart goes out to those poor people. I know they're suffering and everything. But pretty soon, when the servants, the 144,000 are sealed, the entire earth is going to be looking like the Bahamas. Scripture's plain in those things. A horrible time is coming. You might not be able to hear my words at that time. You'll have to seek me out. I won't have money to go see you. I don't have money now to go to the grocery store hardly, And if I do, I got to get on my bicycle, and winter's coming. I got my own problems. You'll have yours if you desire not to listen now. Something's going to click. You're going to hear, hey, let us go up to the house of Yahweh. Going to be established in the chief of the nations. It was spoken of. The 2 different prophets brought it up. Look it up yourself. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the house of Yahweh. And there will be where the 144,000 were gathered at the time of their sealing, when the Bahamas worldwide will take place. So please, pass on the 3 sentences to salvation to everyone you know. If they'll accept it, they do. Don't push it. If they don't, say, okay, well, that's fine. It's what I'm going to do. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to do those 3 things, just like a Boy Scout or a Weeblo or whatever. I'm going to do them 3 things. Now here in Yachanan 5:45, this is how to learn how to speak our king's language so you can understand him. Remember, he wrote everything in parables. Only those that can believe understand what it is that he said, because they know his language. Watch, it says, do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moshe, in whom you trust. Remember, they brought an adulterous woman to him, and said, hey, we caught her in the very act of adultery. What does Moses say? They were pretending. Of course, they had their Talmud, where they, the Yadaim, the children of Yahweh, were brought into Babylonian captivity, and the Babylonians ruled over the children, and the rulers of the children had to bend backwards so they didn't get executed or whatever, and they started teaching lies, like you can't eat a cheeseburger. It's not at all what it's speaking of. It says not to boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. And the reason it said that, it didn't get into the specifics, but if you did some studies and research to learn how to read these scriptures with knowledge and understanding, you'd know it used to be an old Canaanite and Phoenician rite, where they would take a little baby goat and they would cut it up into pieces, and they'd boil it in their mother's milk, the goat's mother's milk, and they would cast it out on the fields for fertility rites, to Astarte and all these others that they keep Easter over. And it's just a ball and a mess of these gods that everybody's caught up in. But at least these scribes and Pharisees, and the priest, which made them all Sadducees, what they was teaching was not so much according to the laws, but they professed Moshe as being the lawbringer for the governing body there of the children. And our king's saying, I'm not going to accuse you to the Father. You got someone, you claim Moshe. You brought the adulterous woman to me, and didn't even bother bringing the fella along with her. And what's the law say? If you catch them, 2 or 3 witnesses to put someone to death. But if they were found out, you're to bring both the man and the woman and stone them. They only brought the woman. So our king's writing in the ground, dumbasses. Why don't you follow what Moshe wrote? Why do you keep traditions instead of our father's law? And so on and so forth. So here he's saying, I'm not going to accuse you. Moshe is. Why? Well, look. It says, for if you believed Moshe or Moses, you would believe me because he wrote about me. Well, Moshe wrote about me too as one of the 144,000. He wasn't boasting. He's just saying, look, if you believed Moses, who you put your trust in, then you would believe me too, because Moses told you what I was going to do and that I was coming. You would believe him. But the real nail in their spiritual misunderstandings is when our king says here in Yachanan 5:47, but if you do not believe Moshe's writings, if you don't believe what he wrote, if you don't believe the laws and commandments are still supposed to be kept, because our Father doesn't change. And look at all the butts he whooped out in the wilderness when they kept breaking the laws and commandments after they said they would. Now, the churches today, they never said they would, but their butts are going to get whooped here pretty soon as well. Judgments are coming. I'm crying out for judgments to come upon this earth to wake people up or have many just removed, because when our king comes, there's not going to be any sinners left. And if they are, they're scattered, very few. He's going to be whooping. Before he grabs a hold, there's going to be some whooping going on. It says, but if you do not believe Moshe's writings, how will you believe my words? In other words, if you don't believe the laws and commandments are in effect and you are to live and walk by them just as our king did and is spoken of, in 1st Yachanan and 2nd Yachanan, it tells you all over the place to walk as our king walked. That's his whole purpose of coming. And he's going to forgive you all the times you fell short before you came to know him. And I'll tell you what, unless you're keeping the laws and commandments, you don't know him. Please watch my video and see for yourselves. But he said, how will you believe my words? If you don't believe the laws and commandments must be kept, you can't hear me. And because you can't hear him, neither can you read the scriptures. And that's what I'm sent for. Enoch even said the scriptures were given to me and my other 143,999 brothers out there. And we're teaching people how to read. But in order to read it, in order to hear it and understand it, and to use it in your life, you have to believe Moshe's writings. With that, my friends, I hope you enjoyed the Sabbath. It went a little longer than I wanted to, but I had to get that off my chest. Please comment. I love your comments. I'm going to everybody else's videos trying to fish for comments, for somebody to give some reply like I had showed you over here on, once again, this is Truth Unveiled 777's video that I had commented on. And, I do endorse you listen to this man, but you gotta, make sure that you chew the meat off the bones and throw the bones away. That's all I want to say. There's things we differ on, like the name and, a couple other things, but not much. This man here, he's pretty close to a lot of it. Judge for yourself. I love you all, and Shabbat Shalom. I hope today we've got some new understandings that give you a little more hope and a little more sure foundation to build your faith upon. Because nobody gets the faith until the schoolmaster brings us to the king. Okay, and that's only when we learn to reverence Yahweh as he should be by practicing with the schoolmaster who's teaching us. Once we get to the point where we could please our Father is when we're given to the Son, so he can clean us up to present one day to our Father himself. And then we won't need a mediator anymore. Right now, you can't get to Yahweh except through Yahshua. Yahweh gave Yahshua all things in these last days. after the 1,000-year reign, a little while later, and everyone is cleaned up and keeping the laws perfectly, Yahshua is going to give everything back to the Father, and Yahshua will become the prince that's talked about in like Yeketskia or Ezekiel and things of this sort, where it talks about the prince in those days offering sacrifices for sins. Yes, Yahshua is going to still be bringing sacrifices for sins, but not what his life had been laid down for, was our willful, knowing, and intentional sins during ignorance. Sure, y'all loved eating pork. I mean, it was intentional that you put it in your body. It was intentional that you committed, sexual sins or murders. It was your intent. But you didn't know it was wrong, otherwise you wouldn't have done it. And that's why our King laid his life down for you, was for them sins. And you don't get forgiven right away once you come to understand you're supposed to keep them, but knowing that you haven't, you got to start practicing them. Then our King will forgive you. He's not a murderer. He's not going to forgive you for it right then, and then Hebrews 10, 26 and 27 come in when you're sinning in something that you didn't even know was sin, but already forgiven for it, and then you find out that you was willfully doing it. Well, then there's no more sacrifice for your sin if our King had forgave you for it. So you got to start practicing. You start it right now, man. Don't delay. You delay, you may fall short. So let's jump on the horse and do what's right. With that, I love y'all. Shabbat shalom.